Hello everyone, Jeff Holiday here, and I was all set and ready to do a very important video on a very specific topic, and then all of a sudden, this dropped into my lap.
So thank you for doing this. Welcome. What's going on?
Total pleasure, nothing.
Now the woman who's talking to Joe Rogan there, her name is Kelly Brogan, MD. She's a psychiatrist. Now, if you're familiar at all with my Bought the Movie review, which, by the way, if you're not, you should absolutely go back and watch that because that is a big flaming pile of shit and I had a lot of fun doing all those review videos. But to sum up in total, she peddles a lot of really dangerous ideas, and my initial reaction was very, very strong because Kelly Brogan is an anti-vaxxer. And there's very few things that get me as pissed off as, well, anti-vaxxers. Now in this podcast, Kelly doesn't actually get into the topic of vaccines, but she does get into quite a few other really weird wing-nutty concepts and ideas, some of which are actually very dangerous. So we're gonna go through it, but it's gonna take some time, and I don't really think that I can do it all in one video, so this is gonna have to be split up. But there's a bonus to that. This also means that I can make a series basically tearing down one specific person's really bad ideas because she does have quite a bit of credibility built up around her and a reputation for, well, believability. And she shouldn't because, well, she's terrible. Absolutely terrible. So once we're done with this, we're going to go ahead and look at some of her articles, look at some of her vax denialism, and then we'll wrap it up. I have no idea how long it's going to take to produce all of these videos, but we're going to get started today. And play.
Statistical manual, the DSM, is sort of the dictionary, so to speak, in psychiatry. And like in the 50s, it was like 150 pages, and now it's 886 pages. And it's grown in volume, largely because of the consensus decisions of a bunch of older white men.
God damn it.
Sitting around a table.
Goddamn white men.
Most of them,
so
you
tired
see,
of them.
the bane. Almost all of them have industry ties. And this is out there. This isn't like a conspiracy.
Now, Kelly in this instance is not exactly wrong. There is quite a lot of nepotism that goes on, especially when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, and some of the regulatory committees that are basically balanced out around this. However, one thing she's never going to mention is the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994. Well, gee, that sounds really dull and boring. I wonder what the fuck that's supposed to be. I'm so glad you asked. This was the brainchild of Senator Orrin Hatch, a Republican from Utah, and Tom Harkin, a Democrat from Iowa. And they basically put forth the effort and pushed through the government a law that states that the FDA has to automatically assume that supplements are safe until they're proven otherwise, which is the exact opposite of how pharmaceuticals work, where you have to provide that they're safe before you can even sell them. And she's not going to mention any of that because, well, pretty much all of her friends try and hawk some sort of supplement or homeopathy in one way or the other. So yeah, there's that. But she does have an interesting question there. Why is it that the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual has grown so large over the years? I mean, in an exponential way. I mean, it could be because there is a huge amount more money and researchers and people actively looking for ways to define and help mental health than there was before. I mean, that could be a good argument for it. Or it could just be a giant conspiracy. Because reasons. Or old white men.
Yeah, no, my wife's mom was a nurse, and she was always telling me that they would get taken out on these really nice dinners by these pharmaceutical companies. They'd take you to a real nice restaurant, buy a steak and
champagne,
baked potato, and everybody could have a drink. And, they would be so willing to be, like, very complimentary of this medication. Oh, I know a girl who took this, and it really helped her a lot.
Now, Joe hits this right on the head. This is absolutely a huge problem when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry, especially in how it relates to doctors. You see, there's really no rule that says that pharmaceutical companies can't court doctors to try and get them to use their types of drugs. And it is not just kind of a conflict of interest, it's a huge conflict of interest, and it is something that I share a lot of concerns about as well. But this is also something that we've known for a while, and it's not really a deal breaker. It's not really something that you can point to and say, well, everything to do with pharmaceuticals is bad because pharmaceutical companies utilize every way they can to try and make a bunch of money. Even if it's a shady, shitty, morally abhorrent method of doing so. You still can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. No.
Training one.
Are you a turncoat? Are you like considered like a rat?
Yeah.
Are you a bad person in the industry?
I am not welcome in the Howard halls anymore. No, I lost all my faculty positions and yeah.
Now, I don't know of any specific instances of Kelly being cast out of academia or the hallowed halls, as she puts it in such a derisive tone. But I will say that some of the things that she espouses goes against established medical understanding. And anybody who has not a vested interest in trying to push forth their narrative or their brand of medicine is going to look at what she says and going to find it horrifying. Like, actually kind of fucking disgusting.
Why?
Been the
just for being honest about this stuff?
Because I guess the kind of science that I bring to the table, which is not my own, I don't have any original ideas.
What'd you just say?
I don't have any original ideas.
Huh.
But I am really good, I think, at curating information and collecting it and synthesizing and presenting it, right? So
you're good at aggregating a bunch of other info, putting it together and regurgitating it to people in a way that will convince them in a specific way? Maybe I'm putting some words into your mouth. I don't know.
Of really being a viable treatment option. So many of these natural alternatives like far outpace. I mean, things even like herbs like turmeric or acupuncture, yoga, exercise, and that's just a single intervention. So there's nothing miraculous about my approach. It's basically just putting all those things together at once.
Now, alternative treatments for things is kind of a contentious issue with a lot of people. You see, conventional medicine is based on really firm and established parameters of what we understand about the body. It's based on biomedical science. Unfortunately, that can get translated really shitty by doctors sometimes, if they're bad doctors, because of external pressures. But there are several really interesting practitioners who will advocate that if you need to get into shape, hey, maybe try some yoga. Hey, if you're having some problems with this, maybe try changing your diet to that. And these are usually kind and compassionate, understanding doctors that really want the best for their patient. But they're also not going to be saying like, hey, if you have cancer, you should swear off your medication and just start scarfing turmeric and doing hot yoga. Like that's not a thing.
For like a synergistic effect. So you can send your body and mind like a signal of safety, right?
From where? If it's going to your body and your mind, where is it coming from? You? What is you? Are you not part of your body and what the fuck? Am I thinking about this too much? I think I'm thinking about this too much.
And it works, right? So if you're just doing one of those things in isolation, and even one of those things is more effective, then it really comes down to the mindset, because if you want it in a pill, it's going to be challenging for you to get results through effort or something behavioral. So the mindset piece has become a real focus for me as being maybe the most important determinant of what's going to be an effective intervention.
The mindset piece, meaning?
Oh, I got to hear this one.
Meaning what you believe, like about health. And if you want to, believe that you're broken and that, chemicals are necessary to manage your scary body.
Okay, look, let's make this really super simple, all right? If you have a positive outlook, that means that you are less stressed. The less stressed you are, the less there is taxing effects being put onto your body. And when you're at a point of either mental instability or there's something physically wrong with you, if you can reduce your stress levels as much as possible, then you should. So of course you want to have a positive outlook, but that is not going to take the place of an actual treatment for something that needs treatment. I mean, sure, if you're taking like a specific type of treatment, you're really stressed out. I mean, you're not doing yourself any good. You're not really going to be helping the process of healing by being stressed out of your fucking mind. But it's not like if you're stressed out of your fucking mind, the treatment won't work. It might just make it harder for it to work, or there will be exacerbating situations going on while you're trying to get it to work. This is such hippie bullshit.
I've talked to a lot of smart people that believe that. I have a friend, she's a scientist. She's very smart, and she's on antidepressants. And if you talk to her, she will argue to the death that these are critical for her life and that she needs them, and she has some sort of a brain imbalance, and it's no different than having, some other organ in your body that doesn't function properly, and you need medication for that.
We've been told that. I was told that, and I believe that for sure,
Yes, of course we've been told that. We've been told that because it's an established fact. There's an established fact that there are points in time where depression can get into such a cyclic event that it is really, really hard to break yourself out of it without an actual chemical intervention. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I am not saying that I support the massive amount of prescriptions that are made for depression out there in the world right now. I do think that a lot of times antidepressants are overprescribed. I do. I genuinely believe that. But to try and say that this is just a lie, that nobody needs antidepressants, is horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Now, there is something that's really important to mention about this, though, and this is a doozy. And this is another example of why we really have to be careful when it comes to mood-altering pharmaceuticals. There has been some evidence to show, that certain antidepressants given to certain people in certain age ranges can actually increase suicidal thoughts. It's true. And that's one of the reasons why now there are huge warnings that you need to be very careful, especially if you're giving an antidepressant to somebody under 24 years of age, that you got to watch out, because if they start having a lot of suicidal thoughts, they probably need to change to a different medication or to stop that medication as it was. One example of this is the FDA does absolutely recommend not giving children and teens Paxil and instead give them Prozac. And that's because Paxil, there's enough loose but slightly correlative evidence that it might be kind of a risk.
The analogy is often, it's like insulin to a diabetic. It's the same thing. And the more you challenge that, you're stigmatizing mental illness.
Yes.
And how dare you? I've been accused.
That's exactly the approach.
Yeah. I've been accused of shaming women, which is, of course, the last, all I care about is empowering women around their health. Literally, I wake up every single day and devote my life to that purpose. Like, the last thing I have any intention of doing is shaming anyone who's made this decision.
And if you can't tell, I left this in because I'm trying to be a little bit charitable to Kelly. A little bit. And I'm leaving this in specifically because she does have a bit of a point. Now, if you can get through some other type of psychiatry somebody to tackle and overcome their depression without having to resort to pharmaceuticals, I think that's good. And I support that. I very strongly, wholeheartedly support that effort, and I think it's a good thing to try and do. So, if Kelly does show positive results with the things that she tries to do, that's fine. However, here's the kicker. Not everybody is exactly the same, and there are people who cannot function without their pharmaceuticals. There are some people out there who are so habitually depressed that they need those in order to live. Now, you can have the nihilistic approach of, if they don't want to live, then why try and keep them living? But if you can correct for something that is a self-harming behavior and it allows them to live a happy life, a productive member of society, then I don't see any reason why that's a problem, why anybody should have anything against that. Every case is different. Every person is different. And making broad proclamations like this is honestly pseudoscience, and it's kind of fucking dangerous. What happens if Kelly is seeing somebody who is very mentally unstable and relies on these medications, antipsychotics, antidepressants, doesn't matter what it is, and she convinces them to go off it and her treatment doesn't work? That's dangerous. That's really dangerous. And next, she's going to get into epigenetics. Take a listen to this.
Because epigenetics, right, is the word du jour for beyond or above, actually, technically, genes, right? So the genes are interesting, but perhaps as insignificant as like 1% of what makes us sick, right? Or well. We never study what makes us well. It's like a total black box. But
what the fuck kind of word salad was that?
The genes are interesting, but perhaps as insignificant as like 1% of what makes us sick, right?
I can't even wrap my head around how loose and pointless that fucking statement is. Genes only account for a tiny amount of why we get sick. Well, in what way do you mean sick? Are you talking about birth deformities? Because I'd argue with you there. Are we talking about heart disease? Because I'd argue with you there. Are we talking about increased risk of stroke or dementia? Or hey, Alzheimer's, how about that? High cholesterol? Has nothing to do with your genes. No, nothing at all. No. These aren't genetic components. Now, epigenetics absolutely can have varying factors in how that works, but this is, if you know anything about biomedical science and genetics, prepare to scream.
Epigenetics is like, how does the environment impact our genes, right? So you could argue that a lot of congenital, sort of malformations and things like that, because this was an area of study for me when I was prescribing to pregnant women, which, believe it or not, was my specialty, prescribing psychiatric meds to pregnant women, that it is in response to that exposure. And it's the body's method of adapting to an exposure.
No. What the fuck? How in the fuck do you mess up epigenetics that fucking bad? It's the body's natural response to an exposure, don't you know? It's just like your immune system, too much exposure and your genetic code is just going to rewrite itself. No, you titanic, disingenuous fucking idiot. No. Epigenetics is an incredibly complex part of how our genes work. Yes, absolutely things can happen with epigenetics because of exposure to various different stimuli. Absolutely. But that's not because of just negative stimuli, or it can be positive stimuli or neutral stimuli, things that for some reason will change and interact genes based upon what's going on. But to say that it's like some response and function of the body is ridiculous. Because you have to remember, genes are not something like an organ or even a cell. They're much smaller than that. They're tiny little chains on an impossibly long series of code tightly bound within every single cell in your body. This is not a system. This is not a system in your body. It is complex interactions with a varying degree of randomness that is staggering to the mind to contemplate. So the very idea of trying to say that an exposure to one thing is going to have a unilateral effect epigenetically across your entire fucking body is psychotic. Absolutely fucking psychotic. It makes no sense whatsoever. It serves only one simple thing, to sound like a buzzword, to make her sound intelligent, make her sound like she understands genes enough so she can advise you using this spooky language on exactly how you should change your behavior, because my genes. Alright, so that's it for the very first episode of Deconstructing Kelly Brogan. I hope you enjoyed it. I actually filmed this first episode and the second one all in one stretch. So it might not mesh totally well, but I figured it's easier to watch these in 15-minute increments rather than like a whole half hour of only 1/3 of deconstructing an entire podcast. I mean, there's a lot of information to get through, a lot, but it's also a lot of fun. So I hope you'll take this journey with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me a comment below, let me know if you did, and I will see you guys next time. Epigenetics is an incredibly complex... Fuck, I can't even speak, man. I am so pissed about this shit. It's so ridiculous. I'm such a nerd.